Bonjour, aujourd'hui on est à Louisville au Kentucky. C'est Michter'S qui nous reçoit, on va voir plein de choses ensemble. Donc c'est parti. Hey Dan.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. So you're the master distiller over here at Michter'S. Can you tell us a little bit more about what makes it special?
Sure, here at Michter'S, our goal is to make the greatest American whiskeys. So come join me into the distillery today as we walk around and detail our key production processes in making the highest quality whiskeys.
All right, sounds like fun, let's go.
Sounds good.
Donc là on est au début avec la réception des céréales. This is where the grain comes in, right?
Yeah, it sure is. So here's the granary. This is where all of the whole grain will be brought into. Before we can unload any grains, though, it has to be tested for all of our quality specifications. So our distillery operator will use the grain probe, get a nice collective sample, and go back to the lab and check for the quality.
Okay, so you have like a quality control check right here at the grain.
We sure do. So we abide by the grade 1 of the United States Department of Agriculture for grading grain. All of our grains are US number 1. We use corn, rye, and malted barley. Okay. All 3 grains are non-GMO, and also all 3 are US sourced. Here at Michter'S, we use cage mills to mill our grain from whole kernel to a much finer grain particle size. Our cage mills are a high quality mill that are known for their consistency in grain particles, and they're much gentler on the grain that do not affect the flavors during the process.
Là, c'est où on va faire le brassage. This is where the mash happens, right?
Yes, this is where all of our mashing takes place in our cooker. So here, this is where we're going to start entering the water and some of that thin stillage from the sour mash process, where we're taking liquid from the distillation process and reusing it into the mashing process.
Là, on est devant les cuves de fermentation.
Okay, so now that all of the mashing process is complete, all of the starches have been converted to simple sugars by the enzymes provided by the malted barley. It's now time to pump the mash from the mash cooker to the fermenter. Okay, so the pumping process will begin. They'll send it through what we call a mash cooler, which is a large heat exchanger, on its way through this pipe and into the fermenter. Okay. So here we ferment our beer typically between 3 days and 5 days before we distill it, and it's our job as distillers to make sure we have those same flavor profiles no matter how long that we ferment.
Là, on est devant les alambics, la colonne et le doubler. Tell us a bit more about how it's distilled.
So our distillation system is 100% copper. There's over 11,000 pounds of copper in this system, making for a very nice clean distillate, okay? Our distillation system and actually all of our equipment out in the distillery was actually handcrafted by Vendome, which is a family-owned company here in Louisville, and they're regarded as one of the top still manufacturers in the world.
Thanks for the tour of the distillery.
My pleasure.
Maintenant, on va aller voir la maturation et voir comment ça devient un whisky. Hi Andrea.
Hi.
Andrea, elle est responsable de tout le vieillissement ici à Michter'S. So tell us about, I know Michter'S has kind of a special treatment for all the oak aging on multiple levels. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yes, so for Michter'S, we start with wood that has been naturally air dried and seasoned for at least 18 months, sometimes up to 5 years.
Okay, that's pretty long, yeah.
Yeah, so the importance of that is the wood sits outside, it undergoes the elements, so rain, hot, winter type conditions, which contributes to the breaking down of the wood, which ultimately will release bitter, astringent, green characters that are not desirable for making Michter'S.
Once the wood is ready, what happens then?
Then we're going to bring it into the cooperage and we're going to toast it to our toasting profile. So toasting is the art of slow heating the wood, but it's a unique process of ours. There are hundreds of toasting profiles. We choose ones that we're trying to extract more vanilla character or vanillin from the wood. We're trying to extract more toasty characters, caramel characters, things that we believe really enrich the American whiskey product. Then the final step is charring. Charring's where you ignite the interior of the barrel. That only takes seconds though. The maximum amount of char takes about a minute. We're less than that, and you have to have balance between toast and char. Otherwise, you can literally burn up all of the good work that you did to release those compounds from the wood. We use a few extra steps here at Michter's, as you'll learn as you go through the different processes. We're really trying to enhance the maturing quality of the product for our consumers.
Donc là, c'est l'endroit où on va remplir les fûts. I know here at Michter's you kind of go in at a lower entry level than most places. Why do you do that? What's the benefit you get, and why doesn't everyone else do it?
Great question. All right, so when the distillate comes over to the filling area from the stills, we're at about 69 ABV.
Okay.
So in Kentucky, to be a Kentucky bourbon, or rye, for example, you can go into the barrel up to 62.5 ABV.
Right.
So that would only be adding a little bit of water. At Michter's, we actually add a whole lot of reverse osmosis water at the front end of this process before we ever fill the barrel, and we're going to drop from 69 ABV down to 51.5 ABV.
Okay.
That's a whole lot of water going into the barrel, but that water is a powerful catalyst for a lot of barrel chemistry. So we get a smoother, richer, warmer, we call, in Kentucky, we're famous for the Kentucky hug in our whiskeys. So we really want a beautiful, rich, warm, sipping whiskey. That's what we're going for. And adding all that water up front allows a lot of chemistry to happen in the barrel versus adding a lot of water at bottling. Now, at bottling, we're using over 50% less water at bottling for just our US1 bourbons. So essentially you get more whiskey in the bottle, which contributes to an overall richer flavor experience for consumers. So this is our small batch tank. This is our single barrel tank behind me. So you can see from our small batch, our batches are incredibly small. So this tank would hold the equivalent of 20 full barrels. So it's pretty small. There's no industry definition for what a small batch is. It's up to each individual producer, but we're really incredibly proud of the fact that we can produce at such a small batch size because it's a testament to the discipline and attention to detail of our team.
Now we're in the middle of all these barrels.
Yes, beautiful barrels.
How many do you have here?
So in this warehouse, we have a little over 14,000 barrels.
So I've never seen one of these before. Can you tell us what it is?
So this is actually a temperature probe. It is placed inside through the bung, and the probe goes into the whiskey and it's measuring the liquid temperature. So these data loggers get dumped to a data pack. We upload them into a software package and we trend how the whiskey temperature is increasing, stabilizing, and then dropping. And that gives us an understanding that everything in our house is on a similar trend of movement in and out of the capillaries of the wood, which is helping us increase the maturing quality of the product.
Alors là, derrière cette porte, on a la ligne d'embouteillage, ce qui va conclure la visite. Donc on va voir ça vite fait. Couvrez-vous et couvrez vos barbes. Alors on se retrouve ici dans le centre de Louisville, à la nouvelle micro-distillerie de Michter'S qui s'appelle donc Fort Nelson. Et on est avec Andrea qu'on a vu ce matin et avec Matt qui est le distillateur. So, tell us a little bit about the history of Michter'S.
So Michter'S has a long heritage. It started in 1753 by a Swiss Mennonite farmer, John Schenck. He was making rye whiskey because rye was plentiful in Pennsylvania. Changed hands a few times, closed during US Prohibition, reopened later, and then in the 50s it was picked up by a gentleman, Lou Foreman. Lou Foreman actually renamed the brand after his two sons, Michael and Peter. That's where the name Michter'S actually comes from. But then later in 1989, sadly, the distillery closed its doors, seemingly lost to history. The family acquired the abandoned trademark in the 90s and began a journey to resurrect the brand. The first phase was sourcing whiskey, where they actually went around the landscape of Kentucky to acquire old barrels. Now, the very first decision that the Malioco family had to make was whether or not to resurrect the brand in Pennsylvania or to come to Kentucky. And the reason why they chose Kentucky was because Joe was being mentored by his friend and mentor, Richard Dick Newman, who was well known in the Kentucky bourbon industry. And he encouraged him to resurrect the brand. So together they resurrected the brand in Kentucky, which was great because there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of resources for Joe and his family to be successful in making great Kentucky bourbon. So second phase was the creation of the new modern Michter'S recipe. They went to a great Kentucky distillery and said, will you make this recipe for us? And they said, absolutely. So it's a bit like a chef using someone else's kitchen because they didn't have the financial ability to build a full-scale distillery at that time. The third phase was the build out of our Shively distillery, which is a small community here within the city limits of Louisville, Kentucky. And we acquired a building there in 2012 and began retrofitting it with all of our business processes. The distillery came online, or we started installation of the distillery in 2014. It came online in 2015. We expanded in 2016. And the journey continues for Michter'S.
Okay, so now let's talk about specifically Fort Nelson Distillery.
Well, for that, we have a great team, and I'm going to turn that over to our distiller, Matt Bell, who's going to share with you the history of the Fort Nelson distilling equipment.
You know, aromatically, taste-wise, what are some of the differences that you can kind of note between pot still, new make, or white dog, and the column and doubler setup you have at the other distillery?
Well, off the pot still, we're going to have a bit more of a kind of a bolder, a little bit more maybe of a oilier kind of a mouthfeel. It's going to be a little bit more texture, a little bit more viscous. You know, compared to the column still, it's going to be a very nice, very floral, kind of a sweet distillate. Here it's going to have a little bit more, maybe a little bit more of just a robustness to it.
Alors là, on est au bar, au deuxième étage de Fort Nelson. Je suis avec John, qui est responsable des marchés export pour Michter'S. So, John, tell me about this bar. I mean, Michter'S set out to make the perfect bar. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, we did. You know, we're so grateful and just so thankful for the amazing bartenders around the world who have embraced Michter'S and who have truly made the brand what it is today. And you know, we really wanted to create a place that was equally as appealing to the top bar industry professional as it was to just a normal guest who was just taking a tour here. Right. So, you know, we put a lot of emphasis on different things to really, you know, drive that home and create that space. And you know, number one is just hospitality. You know, here in Kentucky, we always joke and say we've never met a stranger before. We're warm, we're welcoming, it's just who we are. So, you know, we really focused on hospitality and making sure everyone felt welcomed, invited, but most importantly, just excited to be here. So, definitely hospitality and that Southern charm. You know, quality of cocktail. We wanted to make sure that we had the absolute best cocktails. Dr. Dave Wandrich, who is the foremost expert on American cocktail you know, history, and he actually helped to curate our classic cocktail menu. So, and without a doubt, our menu is fantastic and really showcases the beauty and versatility of Michter'S. You know, next would be our ice program. We have an ice program that truly takes our cocktails to the next level. And that includes, it's gorgeous. But that includes a Scotsman, which is great for making that perfect nugget ice. We have a Hoshizaki that makes perfect cubed ice, and we even have a Kleinbell that makes that perfectly clear block ice. That's so beautiful. It sits on our back bar here. So, and then finally, education. We truly wanted the bar at Fort Nelson to be a platform for bar education. And we've had a number of different individuals come through, perform guest chefs, seminars, not just bartenders, but actual industry professionals just to talk about what they do. So those are the things that we've really focused on, and the response has been just overwhelmingly positive.
Which cocktails do you recommend for the different bottlings?
And finally, I would probably recommend with our US 1 American, because of the vanilla notes, the sweetness from that whiskey, I would go with something like a Boulevardier, which has a little bit more of a bitter note. I think the sweetness would actually help to balance out some of that, with the sweetness helping to balance out the bitter flavors. But listen, if you're a whiskey guy who likes to drink your whiskey neat, I get it. I'm from Kentucky, I get it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But something else we've really seen is maybe you go with a classic highball. You really can't go wrong with a nice highball. My absolute favorite highball that Michter's can offer, I like our American whiskey with a lemon twist. It's my go-to when I really want something really refreshing. Exactly, you got it, exactly.
Well, that's great. Listen, thanks, and let's finish another cocktail or two.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Cheers.
Cheers.